This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
The International Monetary Fund, IMF, says Nigeria will only be able to help the truly vulnerable if subsidies on fuel and electricity are completely removed. The IMF reiterated the importance of eliminating these subsidies to redirect resources towards more targeted and impactful social welfare programs. This advice comes on the heels of major economic reforms undertaken by the Tinubu administration, which have led to a cost of living crisis in the country. To understand the implications of this, we're joined by a statistician, Emmanuel Osemeka. Good morning and welcome, Mr. Osemeka.
Good morning, Nabila.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Let's start off with your reaction in isolation. I just want to start with just your reaction to the IMF's suggestion on the removal of subsidies on electricity and fuel.
IMF is filled with wonderful technocrats who also understand the politics of the time. Unfortunately, I'm not surprised by IMF's comments, or what I would call posture, because IMF has constantly advised, emerging economies such as Nigeria with the wrong economic advices, and one of the major advice, or one of the major soundbites of IMF over the years is that Nigeria must remove subsidies. Nigeria must devalue its currency. Nigeria must do away, 100% with removal of subsidy in many areas, food subsidy, electricity subsidy, in many areas, without remembering that, or without minding the fact that Nigeria is quite peculiar, and that models that have worked, economic models that have worked in certain climes may not necessarily apply to Nigeria. And of course, when, leaders who really do not understand, or who really do not have full grasp of the makeup of the Nigerian economy and is working, take IMF and World Bank advices hook, line, and sinker. What you have in Nigeria today is what you're going to get, definitely. I pity Olayemi Cardoso, the current CBN governor. I mean, when I listen to him on TV, radio, defend, the actions they are taking today and the efforts they are making to try to, catch the Naira from running away completely from them and all that. I really pity him because, he's a fine gentleman. He's one of the best economists that I've seen, over the years, who understands clearly what and how to do it. Unfortunately, removal of subsidy is not a problem, but the issue is how. How do you remove it to ensure that the effect of the removal, because any time you remove subsidy, there's always an effect.
Of course.
If you cast your mind back, in the days of late Stanley Abacha, he removed some part of the fuel subsidy at the time, but he brought what you call PTF, Petroleum Trust Fund. So the idea was that the savings from the removal of some portion of the subsidy was invested back in the hospitals, in drug manufacturing, in road construction, in so many areas.
Mr. Osemeka, isn't that in some way what the IMF is saying? Because there's an argument that has been made that even though the IMF gives these suggestions, when they are supposedly implemented, they're not implemented to the fullest. And as such, we can't even say that we have seen it through and seen the results they said would come from implementation. Look at fuel subsidy, for instance. We claim it's gone, but fuel has been pegged at a price across the board for months now, despite its performance on the international market. So what are your thoughts on that argument?
My argument is to the extent that listening to IMF is digging your own grave. Because IMF will tell you one thing today and without thinking about the consequences. And when the consequences reverberate, they turn around to try to tell you, oh, you didn't do it the way we told you to do it. Oh, you didn't do it the way it ought to have been done. Oh, even there are some things you have not even done properly. Let me be very honest with you. In reality, there is no part of the world, there is no government of the world that does not pay subsidy on anything, on several of their commodities, especially the one that affects everybody. We can argue from now till tomorrow that the fuel subsidy does not reach the poor. That's a lie. One of the major reasons you have food crisis and the food inflation spiraling the way it's going today is transportation. It's not the absence of food. That's why the government is making a big blunder by, they are releasing grains. Releasing grains from strategic reserve will not bring down the food cost. The major problem with the fuel subsidy removal, as it affects everything, is cost of transportation. Nigeria does not have effective, efficient, cost-effective public transportation system. We do not have it. Therefore, the public transportation is largely controlled by the private sector. So they decide how, when, what to put. And let me tell you, there's this adage in Nigeria that anything that goes up that never comes down. That's the reality.
Yes.
Then, of course, the mismanagement of our resources and, of course, the proliferation of, the expenditures that's going on, the hunger for unnecessary luxury at the expense of the populace by the government functionaries, the new leadership, and, of course, the previous leadership, has made it impossible for the Naira to appreciate. I do not see how an economic manager comes and sees that, this graph is going up. And one of the factors that is pushing this graph is our insatiable desire for foreign goods. And you come in, the first thing you do is to borrow 7 trillion naira to spend on your luxury.
So, Mr. Semeka, let me ask you this, because we are running out of time. So just as a final thought, do you think that this administration will actually listen to this, if you like, fresh advice from the IMF, or is there a possibility that we will see a reintroduction of subsidies at some point if the results are simply not coming through?
The reality is that we're paying subsidies right now. We've been paying subsidies in the last 4 or 5 months. That's what is going on. We're paying subsidies. So the administration practically listens to IMF. Everything they are doing is based from IMF. That's it. And that's why the entire economy is running away from them. I'll be very practical with you. We are paying subsidy. Take it from me. Nigeria is paying subsidy. Otherwise, the prices would have gone up and down, up and down, up and down. What has happened is that the NNPC over the years have mismanaged the payment of subsidy, which they call under recovery. And as a result, they couldn't understand the books could not be balanced adequately. So therefore, what they try to do now is to say, okay, you know what? You cannot be selling, receiving money, telling us how. No, let CBN receive the money direct. Then your expenditures must go through CBN, and of course, you should go through scrutiny of the National Assembly and the rest of them and all that. So that's what they are trying to do. What I presume to call some level of transparency. But in reality is that the opaque nature of NNPC still requires some level of, on time. So that way we're able to understand, okay, how much did you pay? At what level did you pay the subsidy? What did you use crude to pay? Did you use what to pay? What are your expenditures? We need to be able to scrutinize your expenditures, every year, not you deciding how much you spend based on how much you earn. Because it's unfortunate. And like I said, finally, one of the things that the government has not done properly is that as at April 2023, the entire 3 tiers of government shared about 687 billion naira. Now, as at January 2024, the entire 3 tiers of government is sharing about 1.6 or 1.7 trillion naira. Where is the money? Why is the money not being used for road construction? Why is the money not being used to build hospitals? Why is the money not being reinvested in the real sector so that it will cushion the effect? Look at companies closing up because they can no longer afford, the cost of running businesses in Nigeria because today electricity does not exist and very expensive. Well, then for you to use alternative is very expensive with diesel and all that. So those are some of the factors that are, militating against ease of doing business in Nigeria.
Mr. Osemeka, thank you so much for your thoughts on this and for your time this morning. Much appreciated. Our guest on the conversation, Emmanuel Osemeka, is a statistician speaking to us on the latest advice by the International Monetary Fund, which says Nigeria will only be able to help the truly vulnerable if subsidies on fuel and electricity are completely removed.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Gunmen have killed a lawyer and politician who was kidnapped in Enugu State. The victim has been identified as former House of Representatives candidate from Anambra State, Jude Ogwejofor. The kidnappers had also abducted Mr. Ogwejofor's brother, but released him afterwards. For more details on this, we're joined this morning by Chuma Maduka. Mr. Maduka is a broadcast journalist with Energy FM in Enugu State. Good morning and welcome to the conversation, Mr. Maduka.
Hello, good morning.
What more can you tell us about this abduction and the eventual murder of the former House of Reps candidate?
Okay, for clarity, the abduction took place in Nnewi Osumogu place, which is in Nnewi, North local government area of Anambra State, not Enugu State.
My apologies.
Mr. Jude Ogwejofor was former House of Rep member representing that area in the last dispensation. He had gone home with his brother who came in from abroad to visit their father. And about 1 a.m., they were both abducted by gunmen who shot sporadically in the air and then took them captive, only to release his brother later. On the guise that Jude was being investigated for writing petitions and leaking information about the gunmen group to the state government. 2 days later, the gunmen sent message to the family to say that he has been killed. And then their father, on hearing that, slumped and died. Osumo is in Ihiala local government area, and had suffered so much in the hands of gunmen who have taken that place captive as against the control of the state government. Also, parts of Anambra State, like the Agwata local government, Oruba local government, have been controlled by these gunmen who abduct people, who kill people, who have the communities enslaved under their clique.
Mr. Maduka, if I may, is there any information to identify who these gunmen are, and not so much their identities particularly, but what group that they are a part of? Do they identify with a group?
I will tell you for free that these criminal groups, they are not a particular group. Some people or government will say they are IPOB or ESN, but I beg to differ because these are criminals who have taken to criminality because it is paying well, and the government does not have the willpower to confront them. These people are not, they are faceless, I must tell you. So they are operating in these areas and some parts of Imo State. Like before you hold burials, traditional marriages, and things like that, you have to go to them, pay royalty to allow you to hold such events.
And have the police said anything? Has there been any indication that they're making some sort of headway with identifying these groups?
Usually, the police will tell you it is IPOB, ESN, but we know these are criminal groups because some of them who have been captured by police, you will know that most of them are not even from Anambra State. These are criminals who have found a haven of operation in Anambra State and some parts of Imo State. So they are a faceless group as much as I can tell you.
Mr. Maduka, thank you so much for your time and sharing this information with us this morning. Our guest, Mr. Chuma Maduka, is a broadcast journalist with Energy FM in Enugu State, speaking to us on the abduction and murder of Jude Ogwejofor, who was a former House of Representatives candidate from Anambra State.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
You're welcome back into the conversation. It is Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. My name is Stephen Imediego. I'm here with Nabila Usman. And this morning, we're going to be talking about the possible regulation of social media. Now, this conversation is coming back to the fore following a statement by the Chief of Staff to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, to the effect that social media has become a societal menace that, quote, should be regulated. The former Speaker of the House of Representatives said this while representing the President at the book launch of Babatunde Fashola, who's a former Minister of Works. He was speaking in Lagos last week. Now, the book by Fashola is titled Nigerian Public Discourse, The Interplay of Empirical Evidence and Hyperbole. And then we go to some of the quotes that Mr. Gbajabiamila made at this launch. Quote, social media has become a societal menace and must be regulated. As many people do not understand that once the send button is hit, there is a potential to reach millions of people around the world, which is capable of causing a great danger, not just in the society, but even unintended consequences to the individuals that are receiving information that may include security of life. To help us to understand the implications of social media regulation and probably to talk to us about some of the other steps that have been made outside of Nigeria in regards of regulating or managing social media, we turn to tech journalist Hanatu Favor Ashoge. Good morning, Ms. Hanatu, and thank you for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Good morning.
Good morning. To jump right into it, what do you make of Mr. Gbajabiamila's comments regarding the possible regulation of social media?
Well, while I do see where he's coming from, the idea that social media is a menace generally is very vague and open to broad interpretations. And this regulation along these lines will definitely lead to, harsh punishment simply for criticizing authorities, right? In other countries where social media is being regulated, the regulation is along specific lines rather than just being broadly termed as a menace or being evil, right? For example, in New Zealand, social media is regulated, but just along the lines where it is not being used to promote terror activities. Because at a point, there was a shooting that was live streamed on social media. In places like the European Union, it's the same, right? In places like Russia, for example, the reason why it's being regulated is just so that people do not bring certain political conversations to the timeline. So it would make more sense if Femi Gbajabiamila had a specific thing people were not supposed to use social media for, rather than just saying, oh, it's a menace and it's an evil to society. This is a very open statement and will be open to various interpretations, which is something we do not want to end up with.
So it's interesting that you refer to, all these other countries and how they regulate social media and the why, right? Which is what you're harping on now. Interestingly, if you look at, for instance, the European Union, what they do is that they go directly to the social media companies and they set these rules and regulations, as opposed to Nigeria, where when we tried it, what we did was shut down Twitter, for instance, or other countries where they're shutting down the internet altogether around sensitive periods such as election time. We saw that in Senegal, where they're having protests. They're also shutting down access to the internet in certain areas. So I want us to start with the impact of shutting down or regulating social media in the first place. No matter what the sort of regulation is, what do we see when that happens?
So, because Nigeria is a very unique country, in quotes, social media regulation is going to have a very negative impact, right? Because for a lot of us in the country, social media is almost like it's almost like the place where people get heard or get a semblance of justice, right? So we see where people are in danger, and the first place they can think of going to is social media, because for some reason even government or government authorities react to issues on social media faster than in real life. So regulating social media for a country like Nigeria is in a way taking some power away from Nigerians, right? Social media in Nigeria has come to mean, a place where people can be heard and get justice. So that is why it's a very, very sensitive matter. We cannot afford to say that, because some other countries are regulating social media, we will do the same. We are not the context of Nigeria is not the same with Russia or New Zealand, for example. So we cannot afford to try to replicate what they're doing.
Well, the continuous insistence on regulating social media is not something that has gone down well on social media with Nigerians. There have been arguments around the comments made by Nigerians about Nigeria continue to demarket Nigeria. So I wonder if you can speak to us really about what exactly it is that social media does, the positive aspects of social media, and how I reckon, especially because we're talking about figures in the public space, how governments can benefit from the use of social media.
So the thing with social media, interestingly, is that the features are also the flaws, right? If one person can use social media to bring attention to a certain issue, another person, it means everyone has that platform. So it has kind of leveled the playing field for everyone. I can go on social media and write a tweet directed at the minister and they will see it, right? So it could be something good, but it also could be something, really nasty at the same time. So, yes, that is really it. We cannot, a lot of people use social media for, really terrible things. We have seen a lot of fake news being spread on social media. It has, in a way, just added fuel to a lot of fires in the country, from ethnic bigotry, religious bigotry, all of that. But also, while those are the flaws, it also still ties down to its features, which means, people have a platform where they can amplify their voices. I really do believe that for every one person who uses social media for something negative, there's 5 other people who are benefiting from social media. And again, while I do think that a big reason why people have the platform to use social media for certain negative vices, especially regarding to politics or the government, is because the governments themselves are not fully utilizing the platform, right? So people can spread fake news sometimes because the approved government bodies are not very quick to come and say what exactly is happening, right? So you give people that window to pick up fake news and just run with it.
Well, so I want to take your mind back to the time when Twitter was actually banned in Nigeria by the Buhari administration. and the stories around exactly what it cost entrepreneurs to see a medium like Twitter become inaccessible for a period of time. Can you talk to us regarding the sort of pitfalls that businesses and entrepreneurs would face if a social media was, can I say, regulated or banned? And I'm not sure which one applies in this particular case.
Okay, so the thing is, Nigerians are currently the most online people in the world, right? The average Nigerian spends about 4 hours every day on social media, and this is about 2 hours more than the global average of like 2 hours 30 minutes. So we spend a lot of time online, and because we do that, a lot of things that we do or need, we find online. Shopping, for example. Social commerce is now a big thing in Nigeria. People buy nearly everything on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. So there's lots of entrepreneurs who are depending on these platforms to make us. People find jobs on Twitter. People find jobs on Facebook. All of these things. And taking that away is taking people's voices, people's powers, but also taking people's sources of livelihood. During the Twitter ban, businesses suffered. Thousands of businesses had to shut down. People were getting low patronage. It's something that should not happen again, really. From an economic perspective, it should just never happen again.
So, as we wrap up, right, let's talk about the sort of regulations it is that our government should be looking at. Because earlier you did note that, look, it does constitute a menace of sorts. And if it didn't, countries across the world would not be having the conversations that they're having, would not be taking the moves they're taking to protect the social fabric, because it's beyond the economics now. It's also the social fabric of a society. What should Nigeria be looking at when we speak of social media regulation? How is it going to be acceptable to the people? How will it be beneficial in such a way that both government and the people agree to it?
Well, it also ties back to what you said in the beginning. You mentioned that for other countries, they go straight to the platforms rather than the people, right? So there is space for the Nigerian government to liaise with these platforms to ensure that, certain steps are taken for accounts that spread fake news, for accounts that stoke, ethnic, religious bigotry. It could be faster response time, because on platforms like Twitter, we see cases where someone is spreading fake news or being bigoted, and people keep reporting, and it takes days for that certain accounts to be taken down. Sometimes it doesn't even get taken down at all, right? So there could just be, these platforms could just have maybe faster response times rather than the Nigerian government coming directly at the individuals. It would make more sense if they used the standards or the policies that these platforms already have in place, but just make them better.
Well, thank you very much for speaking with us this morning. Our guest on the conversation, Hannatu Favour Ashoge, is a tech journalist, and she joined us this morning to speak on the conversation around banning social media by Nigerian public officials. That's all this week for Tech Now. Join us next time around when we return with another edition of Tech Now. Good morning.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM.